Okay, I have a few remarks just to get us going. First of all, once again, good afternoon, everyone. And I am so pleased, relieved, I'm so pleased to see you all here. It's been a long time in terms of planning this conference and to get everyone here. It's obvious by your participation at the turnout here, the degree of interest for this subject and the need to engage in a new way with communities across this great province of ours. So once again, welcome to all of you. My name is Hamlin Grange, and I'm chair of the African and Caribbean Conference Advisory Group. I'm also president of DiversiPro. I hope you enjoyed your lunch. I thought it was pretty good. You know, it may seem a simple thing, but we sweated over the lunch menu. We really did, because there's a lot of unique things going on at this conference that cannot be missed. Bringing two communities, African and Caribbean communities, a multiplicity of communities together, different cultural beliefs, different cultural practices, and it comes down to food as well. And so you have to honor and respect those things as well, you know? And so we had a lot of discussions. So I think Art of Catering, I think they hit it out of the park. So thank you very much, Art of Catering. Thank you. I also want to thank the YMCA of Greater Toronto for hosting us here today. You know, it's sort of like coming back home for me. I sat on the board of the YMCA for many, many years. Many years, the board of the YMCA, great organization, and had many meetings here and in this building. And so really want to thank the Y for their generosity and their support in this initiative. And you'll hear more about from the Y in a few minutes. A couple other housekeeping things. There is Wi-Fi available. And you know, this is the age of the internet. And so if you want to use the Wi-Fi, the name is Philanthropy. The email is philanthropy@guest.ca. And the password is Philanthropy. Pretty easy to remember, okay? And for those who are going to be tweeting, I've been tweeting. You know, I've entered the 22nd century, really big time, folks. So the hashtag is inclusive giving, and the address is @inclusivegiving. Pretty easy to remember. So I really encourage you to tweet and do things to your networks. More people need to know about what we're doing today. So I really encourage you to do that. Washrooms, really important. Second floor. Just go up the door upstairs. Don't be fooled, because you come up to the door and suddenly in front of the newcomer center. I got confused because since I left the Y, they've renovated the place. I walked up and I went, oh my God, where are the washrooms? Just said, no, it's that way. So just go left when you go upstairs on the second floor, okay? And the men's room and the ladies' room around there as well. So those are my housekeeping. Again, want to welcome you to what I think is quite a unique conference. This conference has brought together two communities that have a history, a real history of giving and helping others, the African and Caribbean communities. You know, as you know, members of our community have a history of giving back to their homelands as well as to Canada, whether it's to millions of dollars sent back home to help relatives, former schools, or religious institutions. Members of our community, of the African and Caribbean communities, have this tremendous philanthropic spirit. And some members of our communities are well known for their generosity. I mean, names like Michael Lee Chin comes to mind. Names like Ray Chang may come to mind. But, you know, there are other people giving. There are other people that are giving, some of them not as well known, perhaps, but their generosity is certainly being felt in a number of areas, a number of institutions in Canada and around the world. People give of their treasures, certainly, but they also give of their talent. They also give of their time, which sometimes is just as valuable as dollars. We know in the philanthropic and voluntary sector, volunteerism, people's time sometimes is even more valuable than the money that they give. But you know, you can't beat cold hard cash. I know that. I know that. But volunteerism is a huge part of giving back within these communities. The Caribbean and African communities are complex, needless to say. We're talking about many languages, ethnicities, cultural practices. They oftentimes don't work together. There's a sense here of the wider community thinking of the African community, the African-Canadian community, as this monolithic structure. Oh yeah, they're all the same. Well, we are not all the same. There are differences in the way we think, the way we celebrate, the way we view the world. These are the complexities that sometimes, even within our own communities, we have to navigate. Just can imagine the wider community trying to understand that as well. But within that complexity comes this huge opportunity. This diversity really breeds this opportunity. But I tell you, there's one thing that these communities have in common, okay? Ubuntu. Ubuntu, all right? It's an African word that essentially means human kindness. At the very heart of philanthropy, the spirit of Ubuntu, respect, sharing, caring, unselfishness, and trust, and community. That's at the very heart of philanthropy, Ubuntu. When asked to define this word, Ubuntu, Nelson Mandela said, it's more than about helping yourself, it's also doing it to help others in order to help the community. You may have heard the story about Glenn James, this homeless African-American man who found a bag last month in a Boston shopping mall. I don't know if you've heard about this story. Have you read this story? Incredible story. The bag contained a passport, $2,400 in cash, and about $40,000 in traveler's checks. And there's a guy who could use the money. Here's a man who could use the cash. What did he do? He turned the bag into the police in Boston so to get to the rightful owner. The police, in turn, eventually gave him a citation for his honesty and his generosity. And then something else started happening. A complete stranger, never knew this guy, never met this Glenn James before, ever, went online and started this campaign to help this guy. And as of today, they've raised $150,000, and it's growing. And on top of that, there are more people now trying to get a home, buy a home for this guy so he can live close to his sister. Ubuntu, the spirit of giving. It just feeds in itself. May the spirit of Ubuntu be present throughout today. I really hope it will be. As you share ideas, meet new people, and reacquaint yourselves with each other. So once again, welcome. I would be remiss in not thanking, at least recognizing, members of the advisory committee. And you will forgive me for mispronouncing people's names. You know, hey, I'm Jamaican Canadian, but African names mess up my tongue. I'm working on it. I'm learning. It's great. Mide Akerewusi. He's right there. Mide, thank you. Jean Augustine. Paul Barnett. Paul, where are you? Just give away. Kamala-Jean Gopie. Thank you, Kamala. Miriam Madzangwe. Krishan Mehta. Krishan, you'll hear from Krishan later. Wangari, where are you? Right there, Wangari. Thank you. Musewe, Norman. Dr. Musewe. Thank you. And of course, Cynthia Quigley. Is Cynthia here? Yeah, Cynthia Quigley. Cynthia, you all know Cynthia. She sort of kept us going, kept us on our toes. She sort of herded all the cats. It was like herding cats. Thank you very much, Cynthia. I really do appreciate it. But I'd also like to introduce Krishan Mehta, who is Vice President of Inclusion and Equity at the Association of Fundraising Professionals, the Greater Toronto, to talk to you a bit more detail in terms of what this initiative is and how this conference fits into an overarching initiative. Krishan, please.
So thank you for that introduction, Hamlin. I am also, in addition to the Vice President of Inclusion and Equity at AFP Greater Toronto Chapter, the co-chair of the Diversity to Inclusion series. And it gives me great pleasure on behalf of the association to welcome you all here today. Before we begin, this is the fourth in our series. I want to tell you a little bit about this series and provide you a little bit of a backgrounder. So Ontario's urban centers are amongst the most socially and culturally diverse places. We have 3 million people here considering themselves to be visible minorities. And in recent years, we have made considerable strides in areas such as gender equity, accessibility, and diversity training across a number of different sectors. So just over a year and a half ago, in partnership with the AFP Toronto and Ottawa chapters, we applied for funding through the Ministry of Citizenship and Immigration's Partnership Project Office to launch a series that would allow us to take a long-term view on inclusion by uncovering stories of giving amongst emerging donor groups and to carve out a dedicated space for an honest exchange about how to strengthen our work and our relationships with our communities. I am really pleased today that Georgia Campelis from the Ministry of Citizenship and Immigration is here with us today. So thank you very much, Georgia, for your participation, your support of this series. It's wonderful to have you here. So this project is really a number of organized presentations that brings together, for the first time anywhere in Canada, donors, fundraisers, volunteers, and nonprofit managers to look at what we know, what we don't know about giving within the community, and how we can work together to become a world-class, forward-thinking, and inclusively minded sector. So over the next 2 years, in addition to this conference, the association will be organizing similar gatherings, looking at philanthropy within the following groups: the Hispanic community, the Indigenous community, and the Muslim community here. And as some of you may know, earlier this year we held 2 conferences in Toronto looking at the Chinese and South Asian communities respectively, and 1 conference in Ottawa focused on Jewish philanthropy. While we are cutting across diasporas, cultures, and faiths, we are also looking at other dimensions of inclusion by focusing on philanthropy in women, LGBT groups, people with disabilities, youth, and Francophone Ontarians. In fact, the Indigenous Philanthropy Conference is being held here in Toronto on October 24th in partnership with a great group called the Circle of Giving. And the Women in Philanthropy Conference will be held in Ottawa on November 6th. So please mark your calendars for those 2 really great gatherings in the next few weeks. So these conferences will be video recorded and archived for future reference, for your resources on our website. We have a dedicated website, so it's afpinclusivegiving.ca. And the best part is that all of these materials are available to you for free. And all of these conversations are continuing on through our discussion boards and on our social media. And Hamlin mentioned that we have a Twitter hashtag, inclusive giving, so please keep the conversation alive throughout the day and beyond. We're also on Facebook. We're really social. And so if you like inclusive giving, like it on Facebook. We have articulated 5 overarching learning outcomes for this project. First, we want to develop our cross-cultural competencies. We also want to rethink and examine the ways in which fundraisers identify, cultivate, solicit, and thank donors. Third, we want to learn about the best way to promote and engage people on the ground and in leadership levels, at leadership levels. Very important. And we want to gain an appreciation of the nuances found within each community. It's what I call the diversity within diversity factor. Finally, we want to offer cross-cultural networking opportunities and develop a research initiative that may stem from these events. And in fact, at 4 o'clock today, I'm going to be moderating a panel featuring donors from a number of different communities that we have already worked with on these types of conferences. And so we look forward to beginning a dialogue, a cross-cultural dialogue, here on this very platform. At the end, we hope to have created a foundation from which conversations, new conversations, and regular conversations will begin here, and more advanced information sharing can take place. So you have to remember that this is a first time for our sector in Ontario and in Canada. And some have even noted that this could be the first time in North America that we have approached diversity and inclusion and giving with such rigor and deep coordination. So in some ways, let's treat this as an opening conversation. And I want to thank you all for coming today and for participating in this important dialogue. Before I welcome our hosts from the YMCA, I want to also acknowledge all of the people here who have been involved in organizing these series. We have members of AFP's Toronto board here, of our Ottawa board, of our inclusion and equity groups here within the chapters, and also some of you who've organized conferences before. So if you can, or if you'd like, please stand so we can acknowledge you right now. Thank you for your work. There's more than two of you here. Yes. Thank you very much. So today, African and Caribbean philanthropy, and I'd like to welcome Katherine, Alyea, and Alyea, thank you, and Erica Taylor, both from the YMCA here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for coming here. We really appreciate it, and I just like to say welcome to our honored guest. We're thrilled to be hosting this, and I bring greetings from Medhat Madi, who is our president and CEO. He's very sorry he couldn't be here today. Unfortunately, he had a conflict, but he just wanted to bring greetings to the group, wish you all the best, and congratulations on this inclusive giving initiative. And as I said, my name is Katherine Alyea. I'm the Vice President of Philanthropy with the YMCA of Greater Toronto. And I'd like to introduce Erica Taylor, who's our General Manager here at the Y, to just say a few words about some of the things that we're doing overall here at the Y.
So, again, we're honored to have you as our guests at this series. The topic is very important to the Y. We want to ensure that every member that visit any of our facilities, our centers of community across the YMCA, feel welcome, respected, and included. The topic is very important to the YMCA. As a result, our organization has ensured that we follow diversity and social including practices. And we have two of our staff members who's part of that unit. And I don't know if they want to wave. So again, thank you for coming. Yeah.
So one thing that we're doing in order to have healthy communities is to bring diversity and social inclusion at the forefront. So one of the things, as we mentioned, we actually have a diversity and social inclusion team that works with all across the YMCA. And as a result of a lot of the work that they've done and our peers have done, we were actually just recently awarded the 2013 Canada's Best Diversity Employers. So one thing that we know is we made a conscientious effort with Medhat's leadership to have diversity and social inclusion as part of our strategic plan. And as Erica said, we want to make sure that everybody feels welcome regardless of their background, their ability, or their age. So we look forward to sharing some of this in the presentation I'm going to be doing later on today, and hopefully we can do an information share with you as well. And we hope that you enjoy this evening. And I have to, or this afternoon, oh my gosh. I'm really on a jet lag still, but just really pleased to be here, and thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Katherine and Erica. Our keynote speaker, you will hear more about who our keynote speaker is from Mide Akerewusi, who's a member of the planning committee. So Mide, please introduce our keynote speaker.
I can't even express how pleased I am that today is today. For a number of reasons. The first has been expressed already. It's taken a lot of hard work to put this together. The second is because you are all such wonderfully beautiful people. And I just want to give you a round of applause and thank you for coming. Okay, so today will either make or break my career as a fundraiser, because I am a Nigerian fundraiser who has been delegated the wonderful opportunity to introduce a Nigerian philanthropist and businessman and chief. So I've got to get this right. In African culture, a chief is not merely a title. In African culture, chief is a title bestowed upon people who have demonstrated throughout their lives a commitment to service, to leadership, to empowering others. And this afternoon, in Chief Emmanuel Mbulu, we have such a man. I had the great pleasure of researching Chief Mbulu. There's my first error. How many do I get? 2, 3? And as a fundraiser, it's no surprise that I would research a candidate, a donor. Thank you. But what I found really impressed and inspired me about Chief Mbulu. He is a businessman, and that's great. But he's a man who cares. And he's a man who has such great compassion. I connected with him, and immediately, when I asked him if he would participate, he said yes. I had known about his philanthropy to York University, where he had set up a scholarship fund for youth who would go through financial hardship. But when I discovered also that his philanthropy extended to Nigeria, to his hometown of Ibodo in the Delta region, I thought that was equally, if not more so, amazing. And here's why. The children of Ibodo had a real and urgent need for a school to be placed on the right side of the motorway. If you can imagine school children running across the 401 to get to school, that essentially was the problem that the children in the town of Ibodo faced. And Chief Mbulu stepped up to the plate and built a school so that kids would no longer have to die and suffer on their way to school. He's a man who, thank you. Never ask an African to introduce somebody else. It just goes on. But Chief Mbulu, it is our distinct honor and pleasure to have you join us today. And I would like us all to give Chief Mbulu a wonderful, rapturous, warm, loving, Ubuntu welcome.
It's a pleasure to be here. First of all, I want to thank God for making it possible for me to be here, and also to thank him for this wonderful occasion. I want to say thank you to the organizers of this event, and thank my wife and my daughter who are here, my very good friend Augustine, and ladies and gentlemen. I usually like to speak with the microphone so I can walk around, but I'm going to try. If you can't hear me, let me know. On occasions like this, you are lost for words. The last speaker gave me a lot of accolades for something that I did not really do. I consider it the work of God. Because really, we're here on this planet. We have but a short moment. And it's our duty to make it worthwhile while we're here. So I consider whatever myself, my wife, and my family have done, not by our own work, but by the grace of God. So I give him that glory. Right off the bat, because I've been told I have only about 15 minutes, so I'm going to rush a little bit of things. I was born 60 years ago in Nigeria to a Christian family. My father was from a polygamous family, 2 wives. but he was the only child of his own mother. He was educated first as the family, became a teacher, like some of you here, Junior Augustine, and then went on to work for UAC, United African Company. And we lived a very wonderful life. My father was well-to-do, but like things in life, things changed. The year 1966, the country was in disarray, and the military took over, a coup. And we were living in the north, and the military governor told those who were, Odumegojuku told the southerners to go back to the south. My father thought it wise to send my mother and my siblings back home to the village where we have a country home, Ibodo. He and I remained, and then the worst happened. A child, I was about 12, 13 years old at that time, was murdered in front of our house. They thought it was me, it was myself. The following day, my father said, it's not good for the father and the son to remain at the same place, for me to go back to the village. Up to this moment, I can't recollect how I got down to my village. Not too long afterwards, my father was murdered, and that was the last time any of us saw him. But like things happen, God has a reason for a lot of things. We were in a village that we hardly knew anybody. We were going there maybe once or twice. I had only gone to my village about twice in my lifetime. But we persevered, and by the grace of God, I got admitted to a secondary school, Anglican Grammar School, Mbulu. But to pay the school fees was something. But by the power of God, I secured a scholarship for myself and my siblings. And that is why I'm here today. So that scholarship was something I could never forget. After my secondary school, I went to work with Central Bank of Nigeria, and to get a job like that in Nigeria, you had to be blessed, and I consider myself lucky to get that job. From there, I got admitted to a Nigerian university, but I didn't take it. I remember what my father told me, that I was going abroad to study. That's what I call vision. When you say something to a kid, they remember, and they remembered that. So I found my way. I got a student visa to come to Canada, and then in Canada, I went to York University, and I met my wife, my lovely wife, Alyea. I consider her my lucky charm. And then we were blessed. And I was driving taxi, washing dishes to pay rent and to help the family back home. And then I helped my brothers and my sisters to come to Canada and United States and help most members of my community paying their school fees for 1 year. They gave student visa and come here. Please, can you hear me over there, please? Okay. So that's what happened. And then after I went to Washington, D.C., got a master's degree, came back to Canada. God bless us, and I began my business. And as I prospered and I invested in real estate, in oil and gas, and then back home in telecom industries and real estate, things began to look up very well. But meanwhile, we were investing back home and helping our people. Like he said, the school came later on, but before then, we had built a secondary school. We had built dormitories. We built a 2-story building for the bishop, helped to bring light to my community, town hall, stuff like that. And then we went to visit Nigeria, myself, my wife, and my kids. And like I said, we went home, and then we had the kids that were playing with my children. One of them got killed crossing the road. And I won't repeat that story because he just said it. So that's what happened while we built this primary school. And then from there, we came back and helped to do that. But something else was the driving force why myself and my family were so involved, or we feel so passionate about giving. It is not so much that you are blessed that you have the money or you have the means to do it, but to us, it's like breathing. Like Mr. Graham had said before the last speaker, Africans, Caribbean, most ethnic people, we're all philanthropists. We give. You're helping your community, your parents. We're used to it. but we don't define it as philanthropy. So for me, people ask, Chief, why do you give? Why do you feel so passionate about it? I say, what else is there to do? What else is there to do? You're blessed. You have to share. So that's why we're here. Because life is too short, we have to think about what it means for those who are not as fortunate as ourselves. And that's very important to me. To be quite frank with you, when we're doing most of these things through the power of God, we do not let a lot of people know. Because in the Old Testament, it says, when you give, don't let your right hand know like that. Until God opened my eyes and said, look, I'm doing all this through you. How is the next person going to be inspired? How will they know about it? And I said, but it's like boasting. It's like trying to talk about myself. And the Lord made me understand that it is not about me. It's not about how I feel. It's about His kingdom, about humanity, about giving back. And I realized that somebody helped me. When I made that vow at York University in those days, that when I become successful, that I will give back. I will. And God has blessed me more than I can ever hope or imagine, and I've done more than I've ever thought possible. But it wasn't to boast, but we did. Consequently, tonight, this afternoon, each and every one of us have to go back home to share the good news. Each one of us knows somebody in the community that had done something that most people don't know about. We need to speak about it, because that's the only way to get people to come out. And another thing, most immigrants, we have this thing about not talking about how we're blessed. Most people are afraid. Yes, in the Bible it says, do not be afraid. Yes, black community, Caribbean, African, most immigrants, they are afraid of telling people how God has blessed them because of harassment, because of attacks. But we have to change that culture. That's the only way we can share and help the next generation. We have to do that, please. Another thing why my wife and I help are because of our children. In the African and Caribbean communities, children have this notion that it's not cool to be smart, not cool to do well in school. They tease my daughter, my son. I remember my son coming back home crying. So you make me to study, and I'm doing well in school, yet it's not cool to do it. And I looked at him, I said, what do you mean? And he explained to me. And we were on vacation in the Caribbean, and I looked at my son. I called him, I said, why are you unhappy? What is going on? I said, let's go for a walk, man to man. He and I went on a walk on the beach. And he said, Dad, you cannot understand. I said, tell me, I can understand. And he told me, he was dressing up nice, And he said, people made fun of him. He used to wear baggy, the big shoes. And then he wants an afro. And I said, is that his son? I said, I can understand, because I was like that too. I said, I was a very good soccer player. We call it football, and I was very good in track and field. But I said, you know what? I gave that up, because if I show you my body, I have a lot of marks to prove it. But the point was, I decided then, because my father had already told me that education was the key. When you have it up here, nobody can ever take that away from you. And he looked at me and said, Dad, I can see that, but it's not cool to be smart, to show it. I said, you have two options. One is to do well in school, have a nice life, and then give back. Do all the things you can do. And buy your clothes, buy all the things you want to do. The next option is to go the other way. And you have to go and steal it. You have to go to jail. You have to lose your future for the sake of it. But we all want the same thing, to look good, to dress, to have the means and the power. I said, it's easier to do the right thing. The attack will come, but it is better in the long run than to go the other opposite direction. I said, what do those guys do? They all look at the movies, they see the big, big stars. Not everybody can be an athlete. Not everybody can be a movie star. I said, that is the wrong thing. And I said, you think about it. And he came back and he said, Daddy, you're right. And I said, go get your afro, wear the clothes you want to wear. I told the mother, leave him alone. And that's what we did. And now I have to testify before you that my son did very well in university. He's now a student, first year, law student at Osgood Hall. And my daughter, she's doing very well. She's graduated. But the point is, this is a very serious situation with our young folks. This culture that being successful is bad. We have to change that culture. And the only way we can change it is by giving an example of people like Gina Augustine. He mentioned Michael Lee Chin. But there are others, the lawyers, the doctors, the scientists, who are doing very well, who have nice families, like the olden days Bing Crosby in the movies, on TV. So it is very important to do that. Because if they don't understand that it's good to be successful, to do well in school, the scholarships, all these things is for nothing. So we have to engage them. So that is very, very important, to change that culture in our midst. Next is for the group here to penetrate deeper so that our people can give. As I said before, the giving to their families, but to now give beyond that. We have this belief that the government takes care of everybody in Canada. So in order to access the wallet, I'll use that word loosely, or to access people to give beyond their family, sending money back home, we have to bring it real to them. And that means engaging in what they believe in. I served on the board of Community Foundation of Mississauga for about 6 years. And what we did was to harness the resources we have in Mississauga, and then to take into account our diversity, and then our different cultures. And then we began to speak to people. Our CEO, Alyea Mackenzie, very good lady. Right now, Mississauga, Community Foundation of Mississauga, they grant out over $500,000 a year, but it wasn't like that initially. What we did was to go to the community for those we felt we identify those who could give, or who have a little bit extra, to make them understand that we are passionate about what they are passionate about. Because you cannot expect somebody to come down to knock on their door or to get an envelope to give, just like that. You have to make them feel that you understand what they're looking for or what they want to do. And that's the key. Our community were very private. Caribbean and African community were very private. So in order to do that, you have to create programs. You have to go in there and start from the grassroots. When they understand that you care for them, then they will be able to point out those who can give more, the lawyer, the doctors, the dentists, the entrepreneurs. They begin to give. And when they feel comfortable, you understand that they want to give to the causes they believe in. Like in Community Foundation, we set up a fund that is managed by Community Foundation of Mississauga that is for sickle cell. In some of our different funds, we give to cancer. My wife, both parents died of cancer. My mom died of diabetes, so we give to diabetes. And then, like I said, scholarships, education, we've done that. My kids, through them, a few years back in the Nigerian community, we did something called this Summer Youth Jam. We organized, and we did it for 3 years. And that was to bring the community together for the youth to understand that giving back is very important. And some of them, they always call me Chief. That was fantastic. We now can understand. You see, it is good to be good. It is. It's a blessing to give than to receive. And I can tell you that I have not gotten any contract. I have not gotten any personal promotions other than the thank you that I get from people. When we went back this year with my family, my son, my daughter, my wife, when we saw the school, the children, the joy, the pleasure, it's hard for me to describe unless you've been in that situation where you look at generations upon generations. If I exist, when I exit this planet, it will still go on. The children are so happy. They have these youthful exuberances. It is something that each and every one of us, I'm sure you have the same passion, otherwise you wouldn't be here. But we have to send it out to our community, because Africans and Caribbeans, we are by nature giving people. And we want to do that. I'm sure I have a few more minutes, if I'm not mistaken. So 2 more minutes, my wife told me. So let me round up by saying, God bless you all. Everything we do is by the grace of God, and God is in control of everything and our destiny. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you very much, Chief Mbulu, for that very inspiring message. I am sure we all got a lot to take home with us this evening, or rather this day. I'm going into evening already. The road to philanthropy is diverse and can start from anywhere, including dishwashing. Giving is like breathing. And I also got that we as a community need to give. We already give from within. We give within family. We need to start to give to the broader community. And we also need to be less secretive about our giving and our needs. And I think that that's a really important message. We do not have a whole lot to give. We do have a little thank you for Chief Mbulu that I will bring to the table. Thank you so much. And I think Hamlin is going to introduce the rest of the afternoon to all of us. Thank you.
Well, I think we've got a good start to the morning, to the day. We have a number of things ahead of us. I think you have the program in front of you. There's a whole story behind how the program was designed, and I think there's a little thing at the back, the kente cloth, is significant in the African culture. That's also represented in the program itself. But as you can see, we have a panel discussion that will be held here shortly. We're just setting up. Following the panel discussion, and it'll be a plenary, everyone will be in this room. There's also the breakout session, which will be the faith-based philanthropy, which will be in the Grosvenor room, and downstairs, and the giving back home and abroad will be in the glass room, which is sort of around the corner to the auditorium. Later on, there's also a session on engagement. I really do encourage as high a participation as possible in all of the sessions. So if you do come into a room and it's got a lot of people and there are fewer people in some of the other sessions, be generous with your time and go to the one that doesn't have a lot of people. How's that? Be philanthropic. Ubuntu. Ubuntu, okay, in your participation as much as possible. I know some sessions will be a higher participation rate. I appreciate that, but we also want to make sure that you get the full experience of the conference today. So perhaps now would be a good time for me to call our panelists to come up. So it'll be Kamala-Jean, Norman, and Bernice, please. And I'll be moderating this session. This particular session, it's a philanthropist roundtable, a discussion we're calling it. And each of these individuals, and I'll introduce them momentarily, have their own particular motivation as why they give and how they give. And I want them to share with you some of the lessons they've learned along the way, and what we can all how we can all engage the communities in different ways. So let me introduce our panelists. Let me get my notes. Okay. Kamala-Jean Gopie. My good friend, Kamala-Jean. I've known Kamala-Jean for a number of years. I won't say how long. It'll just show how old I am. Kamala-Jean's philanthropic passion, I guess you could put it that way, really is mainly in the arts and education. For example, National Ballet School, National Ballet of Canada, Harbourfront Corporation, Roy Thompson Hall, TIFF, ROM, Toronto Arts Foundation, Stratford Festival, the list goes on and on. In education, York University, very much involved with the Jean Augustine Chair, the Nellie Langford Royal Library, U of T, the Black Business Professional Association Scholarship that she was the inaugural chair, I guess, or manager of that particular scholarship that now is giving out millions of dollars in scholarship to young people across the country. There's a scholarship that's currently in her mother's name. Has been there for almost 15 years as part of that scholarship. She sponsored a basic school in Jamaica for health, involved with the Sick Kids Hospital for Cancer Project in Jamaica, community organizations, JCA, the list goes on. Ladies and gentlemen, Kamala-Jean Gopie. Bernice Carnegie. Now, any hockey fans in the room? This is a Canadian crowd, right? I mean, everybody, most people like hockey. You know, I can't understand the game. It's sort of for me, it's like cricket. I still don't get cricket. I like to watch it. Sort of like hockey. I still don't get hockey. What's with this blue line? I don't know if you don't trip over it, but it's another issue. But and the Leafs one day may win. But it's okay. I don't know enough about hockey, so I'm saying I'm optimistic about the Leafs. I don't know enough about hockey. That's a good one. I love it. I love it. Thank you very much. Thanks, Marva. Bernice Carnegie, the reason why I mentioned hockey is that her father, Herb Carnegie, in his day, in what, the late 50s, I guess? 30s, 40s, that's right, yeah. He was sort of like the Wayne Gretzky of that era. But the funny thing about Herb, he was never able to play in the big leagues. Not because he wasn't good enough, he was just too black. In fact, when I was at CBC, I did a documentary called Black Ice, and I featured Herb in that documentary, along with current day black hockey players. And it was amazing the stories that came out. The challenges that Herb Carnegie went through in his day, you think it would be over in terms of discrimination and racism and differential treatment and all of that. It was present even to today's. So the things really hadn't changed that much, but it's also changed a lot. But Herb Carnegie is the kind of guy, when I met Herb, and the first time I sat down with him in his home, and I did the interview with him, what struck me about Herb Carnegie, you know the saying is that the best revenge is living well? That's Herb Carnegie. His best revenge was just doing things well, okay? And he did it so well that he started his own foundation called the Future Aces, and you'll hear more about that. And it's really named after the Quebec Aces, I guess. Is that what? It was? We'll talk about that. So fill us in on that. Okay, good. But there are a lot of stories about Herb Carnegie. But Bernice, his daughter, was a founding director of the Herb H. Carnegie Future Aces Foundation with her parents, Audrey and Herb, who's now no longer with us. She served as the executive director for 17 years. She became senior consultant of the foundation this year, 2013. She's always been passionate about sharing their positive lifestyle message based on the Future Aces philosophy created by her father back in 1956. And this has guided her in so many ways. Personal success is used as a tool in hundreds of schools and continues to enhance the lives of thousands of students across the GTA and perhaps even North America and around the world. Ladies and gentlemen, Bernice Carnegie. Dr. Norman Musewe, he's a pediatric cardiologist. He has a private practice and works as a part-time staff team member in the Hospital for Sick Children in Toronto. He was born in Zimbabwe and immigrated to Canada in 1981. And he served on a number of boards of African enterprise organizations dedicated to social and economic development in Africa. He's also active in supporting the Herbie Fund at Sick Kids and the Zimbabwe Clinic Fund, where he's able to help patients from Africa where they come for surgery at Sick Kids and raise funds to buy equipment to refurbish maternal and child clinics in Zimbabwe. And when he's not practicing and fundraising, when he has some time, he pursues his interest in community impact through a social enterprise he established in South Africa and Zimbabwe. And through this venture, profits remain in Africa and are used to meet community needs through employment and skills training. Ladies and gentlemen, Norman Musewe. Well, the obvious No, when I was putting this this panel together, and there were so many names, I said you need to have so and so, you need to have so and so. At some point, you have to stop. You say, look, I can't have 25 people. So, are there 3 individuals that I think that could sort of capture the essence of what we read about here in terms of why they do it? And I thought these 3 individuals should do it. And the obvious question that came to my mind was, well, so why the heck do you do what you do? What's your motivation? And so that's the opening question I'd like to ask to each one. If you just go down the line and just say, you know, why do you do what you do, Kamala?
Well, I give...
And can I recommend, speak right into the microphone. It's a strange mic, so you have to speak right into it or they won't be able to hear you. Put your mouth right into it. Thank you.
I give because somebody took a chance on me and made sure that I finished high school in Jamaica so I could come here and go to university. And so, because someone took a flyer on me, I'm prepared to take flyers on others as well, knowing that you throw that stone in the pond, and the ripple effect goes well beyond what you do. And the other reason I give is that I grew up at a Quaker boarding school, and one of the things I learned then was that you give back. As a little girl, getting a shilling a term as pocket money, I made sure that I had a half a penny for the collection plate every Sunday. And so tithing, as it was then, was what I do. And ever since I've been working, giving is part of my budget in the same way that I plot out for rent and hydro and food and entertainment. Giving is very much a part of my budget. And so I can say that since I was 9 years old, giving is what has been very important in my life.
Okay. Okay, Bernice, what motivates you? What's your motivation?
Well, I was born here, not too far from here in the old Mount Sinai Hospital, 68 years ago. And I've had a really, really great life. Parents who loved us, parents who were always there for us. And my husband and I had this wonderful little place out in the country, 10 acres, and he built me a lovely home. And then my marriage ended, and I had to learn to support my family. So I ended up working with my father as a financial planner at Investors Group. We had desks side by side, and I was the only female there for 3 years as a consultant. And I watched him take off. He would book his appointments so that he could go to schools and share a positive message with young people. And he'd say, "Do you want to come?" And I said, "Sure, I want to come. I want to see what my dad's doing in schools." And so I followed him around. I was a great little shadow, and I caught the bug. That's it. I caught the bug. His sense of wanting to give back was so strong and always present that I caught the bug, and I just can't let it go. So it's become a part of who I am, that it's so important that as each of us has whatever we have, whatever abilities we have, whatever financial resources we have, if you don't give it back, why are you here?
Thank you. Norman, what motivates you? You see that? Thank you. You've done so much, especially in the area of health in children. What's your motivation?
Yeah, that question begs, it almost begs that I should give you my life story. But that's going to be too long.
I think I just asked an African a question. I've been warned, Mide. Okay, fair enough. Go ahead, Norman.
Yes, I would start off by saying that growing up in Zimbabwe, and I thank God that I was not as fortunate as some might be. So I have walked the road of hunger, poverty, and such like, disease and so on. You wouldn't think that looking at me today. So I used to give simply by Ubuntu, simply because it's part of being African. So when I came overseas, initially to England and then to Canada, I had to help my family. And that's just part of life. You don't think about that. But I must say that a big change happened in my life when I came to know who Jesus was in my life. I came to know the role of God. I came to know that He cared for me and He had created me specially. As a consequence, my desire, I became then aware of the fact that I'm one among billions of people walking this earth, created by their Maker, who loves them dearly. And it just made it so compulsive for me that I must care. Care not only just for my immediate family, my parents, my brothers and sisters, but for everybody. And as a consequence, that has directed my thinking, my life, myself and my wife and our children. That's, in a nutshell, that's what motivates us. Thank you.
Good. Well, thank you for that. It's interesting points you make, and we will hear more about faith-based giving in another session. But I want to pick up on that because I want to get some sense from each of you in terms of the role of faith. Seems to be a common theme when you talk to people, certainly within the African and Caribbean communities, about why they give and how they give. Faith is really important. I'm just wondering what role do you think that plays in a community context for people's desire and ambition to give to others. I'm just wondering, and how significant is that strength of faith? Anyone, if you can answer that.
Well, as a child, the first opportunity to give for me was at the Quaker boarding school.
Right. Yeah.
And therefore, the sense of giving back was strong. I went to an Anglican girls' school, and the Anglican church paid for my last year in high school. So that was where the sense of giving, and tithing, which was part of what I grew up with, became very significant. And I think for many of us in the Caribbean, the first place that we start to give of our time, of our energy, and of our money is in fact in church. Because certainly people of my generation, and I'm 71, we didn't grow up with community organizations around. The church was the community organization. The church was where things happened, And so any giving back took place. The collection plate came around, you put your money in, and then the church did things in the community. So for me, from I was 9 years old, that was when I understood that you gave back because you were blessed.
That's right. Yeah. Bernice, growing up in the household with your father, Herb, and your mother, what role did faith play in his decision? Working at Investors Group and spending time there, and then taking off and helping others. Was faith an important part of his decision, and also where you were raised?
We did go to church every Sunday. Mm-hmm. We were united. My mother did go to Bible college, which changed her faith. And I have to say, I had a falling out with faith when I was around 14, 15. I was caught up in the racial riots in the United States, seeing that in the newspapers all the time. And I was very disconcerted with the fact that they had segregated churches. And that really killed it for me. I couldn't understand it. And so for a long time, I backed away from religion. And I was one of these people that was almost on the Martin Luther King March. Actually, I was packed and ready to go to show how I felt about wanting to make a difference. And my parents stopped me. They thought I was going to get killed. So I unpacked. And I had to make a decision about what I was going to do to make a difference for the people that I came in contact with. And so I decided it would be one at a time. One at a time as things happened to me. And I was alone. I was the only black student in my classes from kindergarten to grade 13 in North York schools. And I was alone. And I decided that each opportunity I had to educate people who came to me with stuff that maybe they didn't totally see another side to, it was my job to make sure that they understood. So my faith is really, I believe that I am a miracle, that each of us are miracles in life, because when you look at how everything is just plays off of each other, the fact that I've been able to give birth, I've given life to the world. There's something bigger. I don't know what I'm going to call the something bigger. You can call it anything you want to call it, but I believe so strongly that each of us is very, very special, that we are a gift, and with our gift, we must do something.
That's right, yeah. Norman, I want to thank you very much for that, because, Norman, you talked about your own personal experience, and but the role of faith within these communities is so powerful, and I'm just wondering, is there a lesson here that the wider philanthropic sector, the philanthropic community, can learn about how to engage with individuals within the African and Caribbean communities by understanding that reality? I'm just wondering, can you share anything with us, and what do you think?
I think having not done a survey, I speak as a pedestrian, somebody who, walks into church there and who is a part of the larger thing. If I may say that I think there are many dimensions to the role of faith in life, and one of those is giving. Giving flows naturally out of the relationships that one encounters in a faith-based community. And as you mentioned earlier, philanthropy is not just about giving money. And I think that's the other aspect of it, that the relational richness that one garners in congregational life, and not only that, the knowledge that whatever one is giving has a much wider impact than one could on one's own self. I go to a church which has a several $1 million budget for missions alone, and it impacts people from Asia to Africa to South America. So therefore, I think that, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but the dynamics of faith, though they include giving, there's a whole lot more. A lot of volunteerism starts in congregations, in churches. A lot of concern, for example, we have groups who are concerned about, who've started a pregnancy center that comes out of our community, out of our church, that deals with young teenage pregnancies. And one of the most amazing things about faith-based volunteerism, philanthropy, whatever you want to call it, is that you develop relationships with people. And that's a very significant part. Indeed, I think that philanthropy, apart from loving, compassionate, personal relationships, perhaps can be a little bit empty. Yeah. And we can talk about that later.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's talk about relationships for a minute, because the very nature of philanthropy is about relationships. If you don't develop the relationships with prospects, with donors, you're simply not going to get what you need, which at the end of the day, in the philanthropic relationship, is to get someone to give you that yes at the end of the day. So what about that relationship? Do you believe, okay, the three of you are philanthropists in your own way, okay, in the things that you do, whether it's the time, talent, or treasures that you've given. Take a look at the wider philanthropic community, the charitable sector, especially in the GTA. How well is that sector engaging with individuals like yourself? And what do they need to do more of that they're not doing now? Katherine?
Well, I think that it's important to be asked within the larger philanthropy. I mean, I came to Canada, but I never gave until Gordon Cressy one day said to me, you went to U of T? I said yes, and there was a campaign on for the first campaign that he was running, which was to raise $200 million. And I was a graduate of U of T. And so he said, have you ever considered giving back to your alma mater? Now, I was giving back to my school in Jamaica to make sure that a girl in sixth form, for years, made sure that a girl who needed help in sixth form, upper sixth, could continue and so complete her education. But I thought, U of T is big. It doesn't need my little $100. You know, there are people giving thousands of dollars. But then I realized that in his asking me, because I knew Gordon, I'd worked with Gordon on different things. I trusted his integrity. I knew him as a person. And so once he asked, I gave. And so from that point on, I then realized that your giving doesn't have to be millions of dollars. It has to be focused on the things that you believe in and that you support. And since education was important to me, and I saw education as the way of upward mobility, if you will, of achieving one's goals, then my school in Jamaica, my university in Toronto, those were all integral parts in shaping who I had become. And therefore, somebody asked, and so I gave. And I think sometimes we just don't ask, but important, who is doing the asking? And I think it has to be someone who knows you or understands what your passion is and the things that you care about for them to make that connection.
Yeah.
So I love the arts, so I give to the arts. I'm involved in education, so those are the things that appeal to me, and so those are the things that I support. Not that I wouldn't support other things, but when I think of where my interests lie, then, and if people in those communities make the connection to me, then they likely will get the support that I can afford.
Okay, good. Do you have any response to that? Or I can throw it to the floor as well, because I want to get some questions from the floor if you have some questions. And because we have microphones that will be floating around. No, I have some here. Do you have questions from the audience? And I can get some microphones too. You have a question? Hang on. Oh, no, I don't. No, I don't have the question. Someone's got the question. Oh, Mide? Okay. There's a question there. Right over. Put your hand up. Okay, thank you.
His glasses are working.
I'm looking at the time, and I'm just want to make sure.
Can I just add something else
Sure.
also about my giving? You know, we all hear about not paying taxes or cutting taxes. I also give because, and I know that some of my money, my tax dollars are going directly to support the things that I believe. Because when I get a tax receipt, it lowers what I pay into the general coffers. I'm not paying, but I'm directing some of my giving to the things that I believe in and that might in fact not get any tax dollars. For instance, whether it's a Jamaican Canadian Association, you know. So that's how I balance it. I say, make sure that I know where some of my tax dollars go directly, because I send it to the organizations that I believe in.
Okay, so you're quite strategic about it. Okay, good. Yes, question.
So in terms of building these relationships with fundraisers and philanthropists, and especially coming from diverse communities, in having that connection with somebody who understands you or somebody that understands the affinity that you're most, inclined to give towards or that enriches your life, does that person have to come from your specific community? Are there other human qualities that you see in building those relationships? And I think especially since a lot of us have immigrated to Canada, we have Canadian community roots, and then we have wherever we're from as well. Mm-hmm. So in either of your opinions.
It's a good question. Yes. Yeah, Bernice?
Absolutely, givers do not have to come from your circle. They can be from anywhere that they understand what it is that you're trying to do. And it's incumbent on the organization to help market what they're doing so that people do understand and want to make that contribution. And it's like a 1-minute commercial or a 30-second commercial. If you can't tell people in 30 seconds what it is your organization does, you might lose that person. You should be able to explain it. You should be able to come down with that byline that explains what it is you do. And actually, it was your sister who said to me, and I said, I'm not political. I don't even want to go there. I don't want to be part of that. And she said, well, get your head out of the sand, because if you don't let people know, especially our political people, know what you're doing, you're not going to get the recognition or the kind of support that you're doing. And eventually, our foundation did start sending something out to the wider community so that they would understand, and they get something from us once or twice a year so that they do know. But it's still a struggle, and it's exactly what Kamala-Jean said, and that is, you have to ask. It's kind of like a sales pitch. So you do the sales pitch.
But the question is, who's the most effective asker? Is it the individual from the African Canadian or African or Caribbean community, or is it someone outside the community? You know, what are your thoughts?
It's someone who has passion. It's someone who has passion for what your organization does. So it can be anybody, but if they really sell it with passion and people feel what you're feeling and why you're so excited about your organization and what it's doing and how it's helping people, that's when they turn around and say, oh, I want to give something.
I got you, yeah. Norman, your thoughts on that? I mean, is it important that the asker is a reflection of the person who's being approached?
I think things have been said both by you, Bernice, and also by Kamala-Jean. Integrity and passion. I think those are the bylines. If you believe in what people are selling you, and you also know that they are people that have integrity, that means that what they're saying is what they will do, because there's the reciprocal relationship, the givers, but also the recipients. Do they actually receive what we say they're going to receive? I do believe that that's the engine that runs giving. And it crosses racial boundaries, it crosses age boundaries, it crosses all sorts of boundaries.
Okay, good, thank you. Question, Miss.
This is not a question per se, it's a comment. My name is Sandra Whiting, and I have sat on both sides. I've been on boards of the more mainstream community, and I've been on boards in our community. And it fascinates me a lot of time when a mainstream board says, we gotta reach the community. How do we do it? Well, when I go to give, I look at your board. Who sits there? And if I don't see some diversity reflected in your staff, in your board, don't ask me, because I think you haven't started the work. And a lot of times people say, let's just ask them for this specific thing. We are Canadians. I'm a staunch Canadian. I want to be invited to be part of whatever you're doing, but I want you to understand we need to be reflected. And not only at the day when you need us for this specific thing. One fascinating thing is we get invited for a specific thing and we don't get asked back when it's something else. So just a thought.
Okay. The question? Do you have another question? Let me go back to the panelists here, because I want to talk a little bit about challenges. We have another 10 minutes to go. What has been the greatest challenge for you as a, as someone who gives? So you make that decision. I'm sure you do get, the knock on your door from time to time from folks wanting you to give. What has been the greatest challenge for you in terms of your own giving, your own philanthropic philosophy in a way? Bernice?
I set aside a certain amount of money that I feel that I'm going to give every year based on how much money I'm bringing in. And I choose the charities that are usually similar to ours, that are grassroots, that I feel the community doesn't get to. Like, okay, you know what cancer does, and you know what food bank does, and you know what certain groups do. But then there are a whole bunch of us out there where you maybe haven't heard of us. And some people have, but then maybe you haven't. And so I tend to look at that and support those particular groups. But the other major challenge is that when you're out in the public and you are supporting a lot of these groups and people see you, you're asked more frequently to support, and you can't support everybody.
Oh,
That's
okay.
the problem.
So is it a challenge saying no, or what is it? Okay.
Well, you just can't do everything for everybody. Look at how many people are in this room and how many organizations. I go to about 125 events that are not my own every year. And so by the time you pay to go to all of those events or do something for them or bring the extra money for the silent auction or the whatever they're doing, it does add up. So you do have to pick and choose which ones are at your heart.
That's right. Okay, good. Yeah, go ahead, Norman. Yeah.
I would say a couple of things. I think one is something that we're probably familiar with, donor fatigue.
Donor fatigue.
Donor fatigue.
Yeah. Everybody is familiar with that? Donor fatigue?
Everybody's familiar with that. That's a big challenge, right? You have to keep changing your story. Sometimes you have to address it differently and so on. That's one area. The other thing, speaking personally, is the sacrifice that one has to make in one's life. I do believe that real giving must be sacrificial. That means there are things that you must do without so that others can have.
Kamala-Jean?
Well, I
greatest challenge for you?
Yeah, but what I do if I can't give, what I do in my giving is that I will seek a project for which I will allocate funds over 2, 3, 4, or 5 years. And so if somebody comes to me and said, I can't give you this year, but 2 years hence, come back to me, because I circulate the money. So for instance, Jean will know this. So okay, for a number of years, I said, fine, this is for the chair at York University. And then once that is finished, then the money that would have been going to that then gets directed to something else. So I have a rotation, and I can go back for the last 15 years and tell you which organizations I've supported, when I made the pledge, how much the pledge was, when the pledge was completed, so that I'm able then, even if I have to say no, I usually give her the proviso. I will say, well, I can't give you now because I'm already committed, but in 2 years, in 3 years, if you come back to me, then, when I finished with this or I finished with that, then I can help you. But as I said, I'm still very selective. I support community groups, the arts, and education. By and large, that's where my giving is focused.
Okay. I got a final question, because you hear about the large gifts. I don't think there's anyone in this room who's not aware of the $30 million that Michael Lee Chin gave the ROM. All right? I'm sure many of you are aware of the generosity of Raymond Chang at the Ryerson Chang School. I don't know the level of your giving, okay, individually. If you gave $30 million, Kamala-Jean, I would have known about it. You see the point I'm making? But I'm just wondering, the degree to which individuals give at their own level, not 5 million, not 30 million, not 20 million. How much do you think that has a play here in terms of what I'm calling the anonymous gifter, where we don't hear about individuals like yourselves who are giving in your own way? It's sort of under the table. It's you sort of hide the bushel. I'm just wondering, how useful is that? Because you're all very private individuals. You don't talk a lot about your giving. So I'm just wondering, how useful is that, and why is it that we don't hear more about individuals stepping forward and being, not bragging, but talking about how they give. And I just want to get your reaction to that.
Well, I think philanthropy comes in at all levels.
Okay.
And, you know, Michael Leachin might give 30 million out of his billions and billions, but somebody else who gives $1,000 out of their income, it might represent a much larger proportion, you know, of their...
Yeah, good point.
You know? And he might not miss that 30 million in the scheme of things, but somebody else is that to talk about sacrifice,
giving, yeah.
That 1,000 is significant. So, but you see, at the end of the day, I don't think one gives to be recognized. One gives because there's something in you that says this is something I have to do. And so whether or not there's recognition for big gifts or no gifts or whatever, it's you knowing that you have helped to make a difference somewhere along the road.
Yeah.
And that, to me, I say to everybody, look, I can't take it with me, so I spend it now doing the things I want to do. One of the things I want to do is supporting the causes I believe in.
Thank you. Yeah, Bernice?
It's really important, even if it's $25, because all those $25 add up. And so we value every little thing that comes into our organization because it costs us $500,000 a year to run it. So every little bit makes a difference. And how you treat those people, I always used to sit down with the receipts, and I would write personal notes on as many of them as I could. My time eventually didn't allow it, but I had someone run up to me at an event and go, "Were you the one that wrote that little note? Oh, well, that's the reason I'm here." And it wasn't a large donation that they gave, but they came to that next event because you gave them that little bit of time. And it's like, okay, you have Jean Augustine. And we all know that Jean Augustine is a very, very special person, and so many people know her. And then we have a Bernice Carnegie where most people don't know her, right? But does that mean that you shouldn't treat people, every single person, like they're the king or the queen? And that's the real trick of trying to make everybody feel like they're special.
Good. Yeah. Norm, final word? Yeah.
I think you're right, Hamlin. It's like the iceberg, isn't it?
Yeah.
There are those who are above the waterline and they get seen. But it's the stuff that's underneath that really matters, that runs community, the small time, little by little. And I think you don't bump into that in places like this. You may bump into it, if I go back to faith again, you know, in those kind of situations. And one other thing I was going to say is I talked about sacrificial giving. One of the things that has touched me most is when somebody gives, not because they've got so much, they're overflowing, but because they know your need and they're going without something because your need is greater at that time.
And there's, yeah.
I must say that there are some financial planners, not talking about you now, financial planners who would say to you, you know what, you need to save up first, and then you can give a bigger gift when you've accumulated so much money. And my answer to them is no, the need is today, not next year, not 2 years from now.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much for that. Okay. So let me. I'm going to end with a story, and I'm going to see whether or not there's someone. My wife's mother, bless her soul. She tells a story about a man who was so distraught, and he decided that he was going to end his life. And so, he was, on a bridge, and he had a single ripe banana, his last ripe banana. And he's standing on the bridge. And a man came up to him and said, "What are you doing?" He says, "I've had a rough life. I've just had trials and tribulations, and I'm going to end it. But first, I'm going to eat this banana. It's my last meal, and then I'm just going to kill myself. That's it. That's over. I just can't do it anymore." So he ate his banana, and he threw the skin to the ground. And the man watched all of this, and he picked up the banana skin, and he started to eat the banana skin. And the man looked at him and said, "What are you doing?" He says, "Hey, this is the only meal I'm going to have today. That's important for me. Thank you so much. You've given me a meal." And that stopped the man from killing himself, because he realized that he had a lot more to give than he thought he'd lost. And I think that seems to be the lesson that you've talked about, it's that give now as opposed to wait until that time. And that sacrificial giving, I think, is also important. It is endemic within our community. And if you take a look at the statistics within our community in general, a community that has some real challenges in terms of economic wealth in this country. Yet, if you take a look at the proportion of giving within the African and Caribbean communities, it's quite high. It's significantly higher than a lot of people realize it is. And so I want to just thank you for your contributions and your words that you've given today. If you want to say anything before I turn it over to Krishan, please welcome to
Just
that.
one quick thing,
Yep.
to corroborate what you're saying. A survey from the United States looking at state-by-state giving as a proportion of the population, as a percentage. Surprisingly, the highest proportion of giving as a percentage of the population was actually in Mississippi, the poorest state in the United States.
That's interesting. Interesting.
The same thing in Canada. Newfoundland is supposed to have the highest proportion of giving.
Yeah. Well, that says something.